Emmett Fox has a long reading to start, and I'll read that, and then Phyllis will do his message. It's Matthew 6:24-33. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and like the other, or he will honor one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon, which George Lomsa then identifies as wealth. For this reason I say to you, do not worry for your life, what you will eat, what you will drink, nor for your body, what you will wear. Behold, is not life much more important than food, and the body than clothing? Watch the birds of the sky, for they do not sow, neither do they harvest, nor gather into barns, and yet your Father in heaven feeds them. Are you not much more important than they? Who is among you who by worrying can add 1 cubit to his stature? Why do you worry about clothing? Observe the wild flowers, how they grow. They do not get tired out, nor do they spin. But I say to you that not even Solomon with all of his glory was covered like one of them. Now if God clothes in such a fashion the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow falls into the fireplace, is he not much more to you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not worry or say, what will we eat, or what will we drink, with what will we be clothed? For worldly people seek after all these things. Your Father in heaven knows that all of these things are also necessary for you. But you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all of these things shall be added to you.
And the title from Emmett Fox is One Allegiance. Many Christians accept these facts theoretically, but are less than half-hearted when it comes to their practical application. And this vacillation lands them in difficulties that always follow up upon inconsistency and weakness. To try to rest sometimes upon the material basis and sometimes upon the spiritual is to try to serve two masters. And this, of course, cannot be done. You cannot serve God and wealth or mammon. Man is essentially spiritual, the image and likeness of God, and therefore he is made for the spiritual basis, and he cannot really succeed on any other.
So what Fox wrote so many years ago, because this was written in the 40s and 50s, and 30s for that matter, seems to have even more significance now. There are so many messages in this culture, in this world, and especially online, which promote anti-spiritual, self-centered messages. And this is contrary to the fact that we are all God stuff. This earth is God stuff. But what messages are being bandied about so frequently, and it can lead us so far into, if you will, worshiping mammon, worshiping that not of God. There's preaching of individualism, where the core message is, what's in it for me? There's hedonism, where it's, if this feels good, do it. There's minimalism, where it's just do enough to get by. And a common phrase these days is called quiet quitting on the job. And of course there's all the couch surfers who are staying at the parents' home and living off the parents and just playing video games. That's another example of doing the bare minimum. There's relativism, which asserts that there are no real truths today, so you can create whatever you want to in terms of truth. And there's materialism, where, as you see on bumper stickers, it's like whoever dies with the most toys wins. And we see the results of the promotion of these concepts, these philosophies in society today, in business, in the agony columns. Just witness the huge increase in the number of business leaders, politicians, corporations, and even ministers who happily break legal and moral standards to enrich themselves or generate extra pleasures of one sort or another for themselves. Recent examples, the huge Volkswagen Corporation, which was found to have altered its programming on its cars to cheat on pollution tests. How about the senators and congressmen who are being found having used their inside information to buy stocks to enrich themselves? I saw a year or two ago a percentage of congresspeople, senators who came in relatively poor and now are multimillionaires. And they didn't do it by ethical means, you can be sure of that. Or what about the powerful leaders at the Southern Baptist Convention who broke laws, silenced the abused and the raped, mostly female, but also male, to protect them, their power and the power of their friends in the ministry? Each of these fits within relativism, materialism, hedonism. It is a direct contrast, directly contrary to God's stuff, to God's love. Or on a more common level, around here, driving is deteriorated to the point that it's not uncommon for me to see someone pull through a red light from a stop rather than stop at the red light, or pull into oncoming traffic at a light so that they can get in front of all the other people who are in the correct lane, or speeding at 90 miles an hour going around everybody. I'll call that hedonism. I'll call that, if it feels good, do it. What's in it for me? Or in Cincinnati, there's been a wealth of lawsuits by the city against corporate landlords who bought major apartment buildings, slapped a coat of paint on, didn't fix the plumbing, didn't get rid of the roaches, didn't get rid of the leaky roofs, tripled the rent, and refused to do anything when the tenants complained. Or, again, in this town, we've had multiple supermarkets closed because they were being stolen out of existence. The same thing, the loss of any sense of connection with a spiritual walk with righteousness. And that's the practical world that Fox warns us against worshiping, against honoring. And the damage it does to families that buy into this belief, into beliefs like it's better to own more rather than try to stick to honorable. Well, think of David Ramsey. I don't know if any of you read his columns, but so often as a family writing in, their income is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they can't keep food on the table for the month because they have invested in whoever dies with the most toys wins. So they have 3 or 4 super expensive cars they're making payments on. They've got a multi-million-dollar house they're making payments on. They're sending their kids to a private school, and of course Dave Ramsey runs them through the ringer for the foolishness. But they are worshiping the wrong side. This is what Fox is talking about. And it is these same people who are worshiping Mammon who have been heard to assert, have written, openly say that folks like in my community here who are not well off, we're just lazy bums. It's our fault that we're not wealthy and living the expensive life. They have nothing but contempt for those who choose an honorable life, who choose to live spiritually. In fact, there are so many who've fallen at the altar of Mammon that I've actually read a couple of articles from conservative Christian ministers who are in trouble with their church or have been kicked out of their churches for saying, well, what would Jesus do? What is the loving responsibility we have to be told, oh, that was for yesterday. Today's a different thing. Quite literally, that's what they're reporting. So how do we as spiritual people keep ourselves, how do we know that we're maintaining a spiritual path, that we're living as God stuff, as God love, respecting the God stuff around us? Well, the Quakers have a set of what they call testimonials. They're commitments to a belief, commitments to action, that they will ask themselves from time to time as a checksum, if you will. Am I on the spiritual path? What do I need to do to be more on the spiritual path? And the acronym is SPICES, S-P-I-C-E-S, for simplicity, living a simple life, for living in peace and bringing peace, for living with integrity, for living and creating community among those around you, for building and respecting the equality of all, since the God stuff, the spark of God, is in every one of us, and stewardship of this wonderful place, this wonderful dimension where we live, which is also God stuff. And I want to go into a little detail here, some of the questions, some of the considerations that the testimonials raise, because I think we can use it in our own prayer walk, in our own meditation. And I will send this out to everyone in an email so you can use it during your meditations to help stay focused on, are we honoring the Spirit? Are we walking the Spirit? In terms of simplicity, are we using financial and natural resources carefully? Do we value the Spirit over material objects? From my take is this thing that I am about to purchase something that can be better as well lived without? Does it enhance my life as I live a spiritual life? For instance, do I need a Mercedes? Or will a Kia do? Will a used Kia do as well as a new one, or better? Just as simple examples. In terms of day-to-day events, do we allow ourselves to be swayed by popular culture memes or ideas of what is righteous? There are so many podcasts or influencers, for instance, who are pitching, buy the latest fashion. Here's the latest fashion on me, follow me. Here's the makeup I use. Here's the techniques that I use, as examples. Are we allowing ourselves to be swayed to look outside the base, comfortable living that the divine can provide us? Are we allowing our actions to take us astray? And do we keep life simple enough so that we can live in harmony and in alignment with God's purpose, with our soul's purpose on this life? Or are we living in alignment with walking the spiritual path, walking in an ongoing connection with divine energy? Knowing, by the way, as a panentheist, that God is inside us, God is us, God is around us. But when we're looking at the Mercedes or looking at the new clothes That's looking outside of the basic truth of love and existence. Okay, so that was simplicity. Peace. Do we build peace around us? Do we contribute to upset and conflict? Do we have and do we practice good conflict resolution skills? Can we look upon issues of conflict as an opportunity for personal moral growth, or for reaching out and touching someone who's hurting in love? Do we seek elegant, simple solutions to resolve disagreements, to resolve problems? Do we make decisions by fiat, by power? Do we control or seek to control by bullying, by personal power, by one's own forceful words? Or do we try to build agreement through mutual understanding and consensus and negotiation? Then, living in integrity. Does our outer life reflect our inner life? That's one of the things that was a major aspect of Quakerism back when. Back in the 1600s, when a stranger came into a town and needed to buy supplies, he asked where the Quaker merchant was. The Quakers, by and large, came from the merchant class. He asked this because he understood, having had experience with Quakers, that they would not try to cheat him, that they would deal with a stranger honorably. And that was rare back then. It is only recently that we have, or used to have, the understanding that to be part of a community, you treated all in the community with righteousness, with fairness. It used to be that anyone who wasn't part of your tribe, you could rip them off any way you wanted because that was perfectly fine. They weren't your tribe. And sadly, I just recently saw in an article someone referred to taking care of my people, as if everyone else didn't count. We've been splintering, and we, as spiritual people, are particularly called upon to treat others in a way that demonstrates the righteousness and lovingness of following God, of being part of this community of people who are God stuff. So, one is, let your life speak by how you behave. Second is, treat others with respect and honesty. Third, acknowledge our interconnectedness and our essential oneness. In other words, it's not my people and them. It's we. We're all God stuff. And within that context, allow ourselves to teach others, not just by example, but by actually teaching as appropriate and teaching lovingly. So that's SPI of spices. Then there's community. Do we connect lovingly and caringly with all members of our community? Are we our authentic selves? Do we allow people to see us as we are? Which means not putting the shine on, not putting the airs on, not pretending to be someone other than we are. And that can be particularly tricky if, when we were young, we were taught that we were only lovable if we did what other people wanted us to do, or if we were only what we thought other people wanted us to be. In the spiritual walk, we have to have the personal integrity, the personal sense of power of being, to let people see us as we are, the positive, the flawed, and acknowledge that's who we are. That allows us to be an integral part of a community, really. And in building community, we have to balance our needs, of our own needs, if you will, with the needs of the community itself. In Lift on Therapy, one of the false beliefs we often encounter, particularly among people who are trying to follow a spiritual path, is their needs come first. I must give, even if it completely depletes me. That's not what they're talking about here. If you're not respecting the God stuff within you, you are not setting a good example of living a life of spirituality and love. If you are taking care only of yours to the disregard of the rest of the community, you are not setting a good example. You are, in fact, causing harm in the community. And then, within the community, to regard all with respect and to teach respect, not just to children if we have them, but teach respect by example and sometimes by words to all those in the community who need it. And that can be a delicate issue. In agony columns, often someone writes in offended because someone called them out in public for something that they had done or hadn't done. Well, that's not respecting the spark of God in that person when you can pull them aside and give them a whisper so that they're not feeling cut down and not okay. Instead, you're giving the opportunity for them to grow in their okayness. And extend your reach in the community so that well, if not everyone, but more people understand that you're part of sharing this life, this world with them. And so that's community. Then there's equality. That means the core Quaker principle, that spark of God in every man, woman, and child. Doesn't matter where they come from, what language they speak, what they look like. We need to respect them for being a child of God, or as in the Penentheist terms, to being another part of God, in them and of them and within God. We need to honor people of all faiths, the many paths home, remember, that we as a church espouse. Now, that's a little harder when you have, for instance, the Christian supremacists who insist that they're better than everyone else, and by God, if you don't believe in us, we're going to apply the whip to you, or we're going to take power and we're going to put you in jail. There we have to speak truth to the misbegotten, I think. But we can still acknowledge there's God within us. God within them. It's just been pretty well hidden. We need to celebrate the richness of everyone in the community brings, whether in beliefs, in being, in kinds of love, in skill sets, in problems that they're facing. And we want to reflect within ourselves the acceptance of the entire broad rainbow of existence that this God stuff has created here in this plane. And then finally, among spices, is stewardship. To protect and care for the God stuff on which we live, with which we interact. They have written here, walk lightly on the earth, recycle and reuse wherever possible, reduce the earth stuff that we consume. Also within stewardship is to promote the broader environmental, economic, and social sustainability awareness and practices, and serve as good examples for building towards social justice and the need for equal access to resources. That may feel like a tall order, but if we're walking the spiritual path, it should be a fairly simple sort of, what shall I call it, guidepost or guide light, or what do they call it on the seashore to guide vessels? Lighthouse, or a lighthouse, as we walk, toward which we walk, the perfect being, the perfect love, exemplified in the divine, toward whom we all are choosing to become better examples, more close examples of. And I saw a quote from Garrison Keillor, which I think sort of summarizes what we've been talking about tonight. Thank you, God, for this good life and this good earth, and forgive us if we do not love it enough. I'll say that again. Thank you, God, for this good life and this good earth, and forgive us if we do not love it enough. That's what I have to say tonight. Any contributions? Yes, Lori Kay, and then Ellie.
See if I could get two thoughts out, but the first one is, when it comes to living a spiritual life in the way that you've talked about it tonight, Brian, so much of it is external. In fact, it feels like all of it's external. Here's how you should behave. Here's what you should do. The only part that is not is like how you should think. But to get to I'm going to say the easier way, the natural way to become the kind of people who naturally do those things. We don't have to work so damn hard at doing them because we naturally are those things. And we've come back to ourselves. Goes back to the reading that we started with. You can't serve two masters. And I heard it in a very different way. I heard it as, there was somebody that I was listening to once upon a time, and he was saying that if you just wait until you get the inspiration to move, then you will always be moving in the right way. And so one morning I tried that. I just sat there and I just like, I'm not going to do anything until I know what I am moved to do. And what I was moved to do, and I felt like a passion for it, was to clean the window of my bedroom. I never had so much fun in my life. I mean, honestly, it was like the craziest, most wonderful thing. And I think that that's what that means about not serving two masters. I don't think it's as simplistic as I shouldn't run after money. I should run after the heart. I don't think it's about that. I think it's about, I need to pursue the inner experience of what it means to be with my true nature, because from that will automatically come everything that needs to come.
Yeah, I do want to be clear. I was specifically only talking about how to deal with the practical. So you are correct. I wasn't dealing with the spirit, attempting to deal with
Gotcha.
the spiritual side. Okay, and then Ellie was next.
And those two of those verses, Matthew 6:22-23, most people don't understand what Messiah was saying because he's using a Jewish idiom, good eye and evil eye, ayin tova or ayin ra'ah. And all it means is, evil eye means you don't give generously, which is practical. And then the other one is, the good eye is giving well or giving good. So again, both practical. And I know you were only talking about the natural tonight, but you really can't have the natural and spiritual separated because they're one. You can't be living in the natural world only and the spiritual world only, because what you do in the natural will spill over in the spiritual.
Thank you. Anybody else with a contribution?
I don't understand. What do you mean by natural, Ellie?
Your deeds, the things you do, doing good, giving good versus not doing good, not giving good, not being good. So those are all things we do naturally.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thanks for the question. Let us give thanks today. Let us walk in thanks this week. In particular, let us remember those who gave their lives to help this country survive. Let us do our best to help build in our own way and lift up those around us, our communities, this nation, and this world with our prayer and our love. We thank the great divine for having brought us here, for having given us this community to share with, to love with, to grow with, to pray with. We thank the divine for having given us our basic needs and for giving us more in love and more good than we might expect. We thank the divine for guiding our feet as we depart from here, helping us stay in touch with love and with the God stuff, and for bringing us back again as soon as possible so that we can again grow together and laugh together and love together. We give God full gratitude for the good in our lives. We say thank you, thank you, thank you, dear God. And